Welcome to Superhero Pow. I'm your host nerd, Tom Franken. Hey, how you doing there? I'm doing pretty good myself, but I've been seeing a lot of articles out there lately, and opinion pieces out there lately, saying that somebody who's not doing too well is comic book creators, that their pay is just abysmal. Now, on some level, I feel like that's something that's no surprise. I feel like the industry has always had a bad rap, and probably deservedly so, for low pay. For years, the famous artist Neil Adams kept trying to create an artist union so that artists, and I assume writers were invited as well, would be able to do some collective bargaining. But as an artist myself and, working with other artists, getting artists to agree on something is a little bit like herding cats. Unless you have like a serious paycheck connected to a project, artists are not going to show up and get any work done. And sometimes even when you have a serious paycheck connected to it, even then the artists will not show up and take care of business. Most of them will, but there's always going to be some problems. So I understand the business angle of it from editors and producers. It's, do your work, guys. But the flip side still seems to be that the pay is too low. In fact, one of my personal friends who's been a comic book artist for years has basically said that the pay rate has not increased over like 20 years, which is just stunning. I think their small way of combating that is that the producers have come up with the exclusive contracts, which they dangle healthcare in front of people. Now, I know healthcare is a kind of a touchy subject here in the United States, but personally, I don't see why every business in the country isn't for universal healthcare, because then they don't have to take care of it. As a business owner, I've got a shop, I got a studio, whatever I'm running, I'm trying to get things done. Why is it my responsibility to make sure that my employees, don't get sick, or if they get injured, they can get taken care of? I mean, why is that my job? It'd be like me saying, why is it my job to make sure that the road to my store is functional? I'm having a hard enough time creating widgets and selling them, and now I have to go out and pave the street? So, I don't know. That's just my take on it. So, I feel like comic book companies have been giving out these exclusive contracts to the higher echelon creators, the stars, if you will. And that's kind of been making everybody happy. And the lower level artists and writers can, sit and dream that maybe one day they'll get an exclusive contract. They'll get guaranteed money and guaranteed health benefits. Everybody be happy. That's what they aspire to. So they live with the same rate that was being paid out 20 years ago, at least according to my friend. But as I said, comic books has had a history of doing this. Relatively speaking, I think back in the old days, maybe Will Eisner and Joe Simon came out okay, but it seems like the only one from the old golden days who came out okay was Bob Kane. And the story there is that Bob Kane's uncle was a lawyer, and he helped draft the agreement between Bob and DC Comics over Batman. Of course, this has become a sticking point as, for the next several decades, Bob had pretty much claimed sole responsibility for Batman and was really only relinquishing the reins to full control over Batman after Bill Finger passed away. Douche move for sure, but in an industry where it's all about money, or rather lack of money, I don't know, I can kind of cut Bob a little slack. And to a degree, the reason Bob is making off so well is because he was lucky enough to get a good contract with DC, which, Jerry Siegel and Joe Shuster did not. If you know the story, when Superman the movie was coming out, Neil Adams, again, champion of the working man, went to DC Comics and basically said, hey, they're making this big movie about Superman, spending millions of dollars on this movie. The press is going to come around sniffing, looking for stories to talk about the movie, and they're going to find out the two guys who created Superman are living in the poorhouse off welfare. That's not going to look too good on the front page. So DC, or DC's parent company, sucked it up and gave the two guys a pension. Somewhat a little too late, but at least it was something, and it just shows you how uninterested the publishers are in paying their creators. In the 80s, this took a big change because then royalties started to finally kick in. I've heard it told that if you're on a comic book and royalties do kick in for you, you can make a heck of a lot of money. I've heard writers and artists talk about buying houses and nice cars because they broke the royalty ceiling. On the flip side, I've heard that ceiling is a little harder these days, but I can't say for sure. As always, a lot of what I get is just hearsay around the industry and on articles I see online too. In fact, recently I've heard stories that big creators are actually turning down work from DC and Marvel. That apparently the pay is so little, they'd rather work on their own creator projects or do something at another company where there's more control. Now, of course, everybody understands that. You know, everybody wants to be like the next Robert Kirkman. You know, do his own little independent book, mind you, published by Image, and, you know, get TV shows and just money out the wazoo for it all. You know, if you're going to work on Batman, you're not going to make as much money as Robert Kirkman is making, that's for sure. But still, you would think creators in the industry would be like, yeah, I want to work on the X-Men. I want to work on Batman. But to hear that they're turning these projects down, I mean, how bad is this pay? But as always, I don't like to just talk about a problem and pick at a problem and complain to the clouds. I like to try to come up with something constructive that we can think of and maybe help fix the industry. In my own hubris, of course. So to a certain degree, I feel like there should just be kind of like a base pay rate for like everything. Pick a big artist, Greg Capullo, an old guy like Walt Simonson, probably punches me in the nut for calling him an old guy. Ivan Reis, I don't know, whoever you want to throw in there. They should all get paid the same. You know, whatever the page rate is, that's the page rate for every single book. Maybe we'll fudge that. But at the beginning, it's the same page rate. Now, I know on some level, I think that monkeys with things a little bit because that's why comic book publishers enjoy hiring artists who don't live in the United States because then they can pay them less. Just like in animation, they'll ship all the work overseas so they can pay cheaper rates than what an artist needs to live here in America. But getting back to comics, you know, the page rate is the same for everybody. And then when a comic book hits its break-even point, I don't know what that is, 5,000 issues or so? Once it hits that number, whatever it is, because everybody should be getting paid the same, once it hits that number, then royalties kick in. And I feel like this is how you pay your big-name artists to work on a book. You give them royalties. You give them good royalties, too. And it starts at a low level. It's kind of like, you know, once the book is paid for, then we all cut up the pie and we all get a slice of it. Now, there's a flaw in my idea. Did you spot it? And no, it's not necessarily that the publishers are greedy and they don't want to do that. It's certain books are always going to sell better, meaning nobody's going to want to work on a low-selling title because they know the royalties will never reach the level as it will on, you know, Batman or the X-Men. So maybe at that point is where we start to fudge with the formula. Better creators on it, maybe you do things. Increase the royalty amount. Increase the page rate a little bit. I don't know, something. Because, yeah, it's going to be sad for those books that, you know, big creators are just priced out of. But on the flip side, it should create some real competition for the top creators to get on the top books. These are the books that everybody wants to read, and guess what? They pay the most because the royalties are through the roof. So that's a win-win in my opinion. The fans get to read the best creators, and the creators are getting the best pay. Hopefully the creators are the fans of those books as well, but sometimes a paycheck is a paycheck. There's a funny story I read one time where Bruce Timm, the famous and talented Bruce Timm over at Warner Brothers Animation, on one of his early jobs starting in the animation industry, he was working with Russ Heath, who was a very popular comic book artist in like the 60s and 50s. And Bruce kind of fanboyed on him, and he was like, "Oh, wow, Russ Heath, you're so cool. I love all your comic books." And Russ was like, "It's a freaking job. I got paid. Don't care." It's kind of sad when that happens. For me, I suppose it was Alex Toth. Huge fan of all the work Alex Toth has done for Hanna-Barbera, but reading his memoirs and things, he just didn't care. It's just sad. Sad that he had such a horrible time, making such great memories for all of us. But it happens. Another reason why creators go off and do their own books, because they're theoretically doing something they like, as well as the lure of, all the money coming to them and being told, like Jerry Conway was a few years ago, that the Killer Frost he created is not the same character in the Flash television show. Therefore, he was not due any royalties for the book, for the character. The book? What the heck am I talking about? They eventually worked something out, so Jerry is happy and still writing for DC right now, but you can see why creators would prefer to work on their own thing for DC and Marvel. So pay's got to go up, and it's got to go up in an easy form. And I think just setting a flat rate for everybody. If Neil Adams gets up from the grave and does some pages of Batman, he gets paid the same amount as everybody else until royalties kicks in. And then he'll make God knows how much money. I mean, a zombie drawing a comic book, that'd be amazing, wouldn't it? I don't know. What do you think about creator pay? Are you against it? Do they get paid too much money and they should just shut up and do their work? Not too many people outside of like Ike Putterman at Marvel, I think, would be for that idea. But tell me what you think. And, thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. And, be so kind to like and subscribe. I'll make more of these things. Take care of yourself.